Alright, it's time to talk about school security. Now, as all of you know, another mass shooting took place in the United States. A lot of kids are dead. Terrible situation. And right away, all the politicians, the mainstream media, and the social justice activists and so forth all jumped in to the socio-political debate. Primarily, everybody's weighing in into the gun debate. So let me stop all of you right there and say this will not be a socio-political video. It will not be about the gun debate. This will be a practical video, how we can actually secure our schools. What tangible steps we can take to make the schools more secure and make sure that the building where students go to learn increases their chances for survival in case of mass shootings, active shooter situation, as it is called now, in case of fires and so forth. These steps just improve the overall survivability rating of the building. That is what I wish to talk about. And in fact, it is quite disturbing that all these so-called experts that go on these mainstream media channels and have these massive audiences, and these are again security experts from CIA, from other respected law enforcement institutions, and frankly none of whom I heard talk about tangible school security. This is fascinating to me. From a negative aspect, of course, to me this is incompetent. Maybe they have their own agendas. I do not know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I just didn't see those 5 seconds when some lone security expert was saying that on CNN at 2 a.m. in the morning. But overall, I've been following this whole situation fairly closely, and nobody is talking about actual building security. So, I will. Let's just dive into it. Let's go straight to the point number 1, which is, it's actually like a saying I really like. It flows smoothly. It's something that I want all of you to repeat to your politicians. So, very first thing you want to do to secure a building, especially a school, is this: concrete walls and steel doors. Concrete stops bullets. You know what else stops bullets? Steel. So, because most of the buildings that students go to, most schools are already built either from brick or concrete, we are halfway there. But in addition, now in this modern day and age, now each door to a classroom must be a steel door. Unfortunate, but it is a necessary reality, and it's a fairly easy fix. Not that difficult to install steel doors. All over Eastern Europe, all over Russia, there are steel doors at every entrance into each person's apartment, house, condominium, whatever. Everybody puts steel doors for their safety. Now they actually put like nice steel doors with kind of safe-like bolts that go in all directions. Probably schools do not need to do that, but just a decent steel door will save lives. And a steel door that can be locked from the inside, of course. So this is the number 1 solution: concrete walls and steel doors, demanded from your local leaders and politicians. It will again save lives. Moving on to point number 2, which is, I highly recommend making all schools as single floor buildings, so that students can escape through the windows should there be again a mass shooting, a fire, or something else where they need to evacuate. Of course, those windows must be one-way exit, so you cannot enter into the building from the outside, and you can make 2 or 3 or 10-story buildings, but again, they have to just simply have this one-way exit from each classroom. Now, of course, the more floors you have, the more it becomes complicated. You need extra stairways and so forth. For schools, single-floor buildings are the best option. Moving on to point number 3, and that is build schools. I don't know how this is not already part of the primary building code for all the schools. It's kind of logical and self-evident, but apparently this is still an issue. Build schools from low combustible materials such as concrete and steel. This is not rocket science. We have such materials. They are not that tremendously expensive, and they can be made warm and all if you're in a winter climate and so forth. But again, schools should not be easily combustible. That is just reasonable thinking. So again, build schools from low or non-combustible materials, all the siding and so forth. So that is, of course, important. And it is especially important, like as we know right now, this shooter in this latest shooting pulled the fire alarm. Everybody ran out into the hallways and fire was open on these children and the students. But again, if the building itself is built from low combustible materials, the fire issue should not be an emergency. And again, if you have single floor schools with exits from each classroom, then this way you can exit the building not through the hallways but through the windows or a separate door in each classroom, much like you see in movie theaters, where each theater has a separate door, usually outside. I think it's dependent by the building codes for movie theaters. If the theaters can do it, I'm sure schools can do that as well. Now, point number 4 is to have a functional security camera system and probably a security camera room with a person in it. That is just good use of modern technology. Cameras becoming ever more cheap. They are becoming of very high quality. So a good security system, good camera system should be in all of the schools. I highly recommend it. Then it can be debated how many entrances and exits you want in a school. Let's say there is 2. So if there is 2 or more entrances and exits, then there should be 2 security guards. And I believe right now it is time to have armed security guards, 2 armed security guards at each entrance or exit. That is a must, and they should have metal detectors. So every kid that goes in must pass through something like an airport frame. New reality. Ton of mentally ill people. Social cohesion is disintegrating. People are confused, lost, and unstable. And that is why I believe that all this talk that we should not militarize or bunker up our schools is just nonsense. 7 billion people. Again, social cohesion is disintegrating. People are becoming unstable. Not an option available to us to have these kind of 1950s open door policy schools. You are sending your most precious thing in the world, your kids, to this building, and that building should be secure. So that's that. On top of these kind of building code amendments that I'm recommending, I also recommend having 2 competent psychologists in the building for the students. 1 should be male and 1 female for obvious reasons. And the very last point is, of course, I believe actually and potentially the security guards, armed security guards, who should be competent and professional, may actually take up on this task. And that is mandatory survival training for students and mandatory self-defense training. It will be great for students and it will improve overall survivability of the building population. The students that are in the building. Everyone who is in the building will have higher chances of survival if they take mandatory survival and self-defense training. This is just a reasonable, self-evident advice that I recommend to all of you, and in turn all of you can demand it from your local political leaders every time they open their mouth with some sort of unknown mumbo-jumbo great socio-political debate stuff. So whatever their nonsense they're spewing out, you say, well, okay, well, let's consider that, but before you do all that gun debate, normal talk, and then eventually nothing happens, let's get this stuff done. And by the way, for all of you who are listening to me, I am on the pro-gun debate side, so I'm for firearms, for responsible people having firearms. So that's that. And the way I would like to end this video is with this realization. Let's be honest, most of the stuff, most of this simple things that I recommend to all of you will not be done. Just not going to happen for some unique and magical reasons and high incompetence of your political leaders. So that's not going to happen. You will not have an option, at least the majority of the people in your country who do not have the money to send their children to private elite schools with good security and so forth, and stable children in them. You basically don't have that option available to you. So what do you got? The option that I'm hearing from a lot of parents, smart parents, is this. They are choosing homeschooling, and not by themselves as parents, but they're finding this very competent online schools, and they're disciplining their children and giving them time, and they are basically learning online. They're going through all the grades up to grade 12, and consider that option. I'm still weighing in on it because I personally enjoyed my time in the high school, and it is of course great for child and students and teenagers' psyche to be among his peers in the physical world. However, it also must be considered that physical world is becoming so dangerous that risk is, and the quality of the education and what is being taught to your children, and all other requirements for some of you, maybe it's vaccines or so forth. I'm not going to get into that subject right now, but all of these demands, that the cons are outweighing the pros. So in this case, consider now homeschooling, consider professional, online, good quality educational places of learning. So that's what I wish to convey to all of you. Think about it and answer me this question. If you have an option of sending your kids to a regular public school or to a school that I described, a school that is safe and tough and resistant, it has a high survivability rating, which school would you send your kids to?